that we get a pretty good feeling and a pretty good foundation for our little shark here, I want to start spending some time on the head. And specifically, I need to start blocking out the eyeball and where the eye is going to go on this front mass here. And there's some challenges in here that I need to overcome. If you remember back to an earlier example, we saw in our reference images where the eye was. It's way out here on the side. It's not in the center. It's way out over here on the side. And specifically, it's kind of back from the front, which will allow us to create this really kind of cool shovel head, if you will, on the top of our, or for the head of our sculpture. And I'm really looking forward to that. But how do we sculpt an eye? What basic, simple shape is an eye? Well, it's a sphere, right? So maybe we should incorporate a sphere into our sculpting process. I know on the surface it feels kind of odd to add another object, especially after we went through this entire process of combining all of these objects and remeshing it to make the sculpture. The eye is such an important part of our mesh that we should look to have it be its own separate shape. That way we can control it independently. If it's its own object, we can even animate them independently. And it gives us a consistent foundation that we can sculpt around. We don't want to have, we want our entire head sculpture to flow around the orbits of the eye of our shark. So we don't want them to be glued into the base mesh, because then whenever we're messing with the fin of the head, it's also going to mess with the eye. Having them separate allows us to control it a little bit more directly. So I'm in object mode here. Of course, this is the shark object in my scene is the base mesh of my sculpture, which is looking pretty solid. Let's go ahead and add in under the mesh object, the mesh pull-down menu here, this UV sphere. Now, it's gigantic, it's humongoid, and that's okay. That's right, because we can always scale it down. Somewhere maybe right about there we go. And we'll put it in over here. Now, the cool thing about working with the tools inside of Blender is that they allow us to make some copies. We can even mirror the tools, mirror the objects across the x-axis, and we've done that a couple times in this project already. However, the big drawback behind that entire process is that you end up with multiple objects that represent the exact same body part just on the other side. And there's no connection between them. You're relying entirely upon the symmetry tools to give you what you're after. And when they're separate objects, if I had an object for the left eye and then a duplicate for the right eye, the chances of me having two different eyeballs or not sculpting on one, and it goes up. The chance of error goes up. So let me show you a trick. This is actually a really cool trick. Now, please note that I've placed my sphere on the positive side of the x-axis. And of course, I could just duplicate the sphere and be on my way. I can certainly do that, but let me show you another option here. With this sphere selected, I'm going to go into the little blue wrench icon inside of my tool properties, which is going to allow me to add a modifier. This is kind of neat. With this object selected, I go into the modifier pull-down menu, and one of the modifiers that we have is mirror. And this is pretty neat. Now, there's a couple things in here that we need to set up in order for this to be mirrored correctly. Specifically, we've got to make sure we're choosing the right axis. In this case, we're going to choose the x-axis. And then we also need to show to tell it what to mirror around. This is not the object that we are mirroring. So this is not the sphere or the eyeball. This is the object that we are using as the mirroring guide. So I wanted to look at the center point of my shark and use that center point as the middle of the axis in which to create a mirrored copy. Let's go do it real fast. There's a couple ways we can load a value into this field here. The easy way is just click on it. It's a pull-down menu, and I'm going to choose shark. Boom. In the moment that we choose shark from the pull-down menu, it's looking at the object, the center point of this object, and using that center point as the center of our mirroring modifier, which is pretty cool. Now, in addition to automatically making a duplicate of this eyeball, what it does is that it just keeps a singular object inside of the outliner. So less for us to organize. I like that. In addition, this is an instanced copy of this right eyeball. So any change that I make over here, check it out, is automatically going to be made to its mirrored friend. There's a link between them, which is pretty cool, because now I can experiment and I can see the results of my experiment on both sides of my mesh simultaneously, which I really enjoy. And that's really kind of what I wanted to see here. I wanted to be able to go in and get a good sense of how this is going to look on both sides. So maybe right about there is where I want to have my eyeball. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Let's go back into the shark once again. And let's jump back into our sculpt tools. And I'm just going to grab the grab brush real fast, because this grab brush is going to allow me to just very quickly block out some shapes. A little too big here. Oops, excuse me. Hit the scale tool on accident. Wanted to hit the F key. There we go. Yeah, there we go. That's kind of what I was hoping to find. Something like that. Yes. Yeah, remember, there are no straight lines in nature, and that's starting to feel like a hammerhead shark a little bit. Now, if I go back into that eye, of course, I can sculpt on one. Oops, I'm not on the correct object. Let me go back into object mode here. And I can start positioning this where I think it feels correct. And I can noodle with this for as long as I want. And I do. I tend to noodle with these things, as all sculptors do. I think I'm putting in the wrong spot. Somewhere right around in there. Yep. And now I'm going to go back into my shark. Let's jump back over into sculpt mode once again. And this is where I can use the the sculpt draw tool to really start to create an orbit and a small fall off here that's meaningful. My strength is way too high. But let's start working with these shapes a little bit, because now I have a guide as to where some of these are going to go. Let's make my brush much smaller. Back to the grab brush. You're going to find that I like using the grab brush. And what I'm looking for here is that I need to make a little divot. I need to go in and I need to make a little eyeball orbit. Also, once you start blocking out the lid, let's just pull this down here. The grab brush works in screen space. So if you're having a hard time grabbing the vert and getting them to go in the right direction, just orbit your view a little bit and you'll be up and running. Okay. Yeah, okay, so now I'm at a point where the eye itself is actually kind of getting in the way of my sculpting process. So I'm going to go to my outliner, just click on the visibility icon. Yeah, now I can see the hole that I've made. Let me just go into my sculpt draw, hold down the control key, start pushing some of this, increase the strength. Start pushing some of these verts around. We may not have enough geometry in this area to get the result that we're after, but that's okay. That's okay. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. And without that object in the way there, now we can start making a real lid. We're not going for a super high resolution sculpture on our first time out. We're just trying to make something that looks okay. We're trying to make something that looks pretty good, but we're also just trying to make something that gets us comfortable with the sculpting process and the sculpting tool. So be patient with yourself. It's not going to look just like, feature film quality the first time out. We're just trying to make something here that will give us a good kind of understanding of how this process is going to work. The early stages of our process in sculpting is just kind of figuring out how we can use these tools to best create our sculptures. There's a learning curve to it, and you're going to get there. And no one is expecting you to be perfect on day one. Now, as I'm going through this, one of the things that I'm hoping that you see me do is that I move some, and then I smooth it out. I move some, and then I smooth it out. And as I look at it, or as I come out, my eyeballs are just gigantic at the moment. And that's by design, or that's part of the process, excuse me. I've sculpted something, I've jumped out to kind of a primary, almost silhouette view, and I can see that what I'm doing is just too big. So I need to go in and make some additional refinements. Now for me, I'm just going to select that sphere, scale it down some, and then continue the sculpting process. This is all part of the sequence. We sculpt, we reflect, we edit and make changes. We rinse and repeat that cycle over and over and over again, and you're going to find at the end of an hour or so, you're going to have a darn good looking shark.